Hey there. So this is Juju, and today is day 40, which means it's the 40th day of this administration, and I will be making blogs daily for the next 4 years. So I was thinking about what to talk about today after the terrible events that happened yesterday and what was display in our leadership and their approaches and the embarrassment I feel for our country. But my morning reading is always Healing Resistance, which is about nonviolence. And so there was a section that I read a while ago. It was really good to reread it, especially at this point. So that's what I'm going to read. I hope it's not too long. And this is about the colonization of our minds. In the introduction to this book, and this book is by Kazu Haga, I talked about how Dr. King considered the German philosopher Hegel one of his biggest influences, despite Hegel's racist worldview. Dr. King's ability to take what benefited him and to leave the rest behind is a critical aspect of the nonviolent worldview. If we can't even entertain the possibility that our opponent's view has value or some small nugget of truth, how can we begin to find a resolution? Exploring others' viewpoints to understand where they're coming from is a vital component that is often missing from today's political conversations, resulting in increased polarization and little hope of reconciliation. And I think we see this so much right now. Nonviolence takes a dialectic approach to conflict, which means that we seek out truth by understanding that one side of a conflict never has a monopoly on truth. We understand that by listening to alternate perspectives, not to find holes in opposing arguments and criticize them, but with a genuine attempt to understand and synthesize aspects of the opposing truth to ours, we strengthen our own perspectives. We get closer to truth with a capital T, and we need a lot more focus on truth than just believing so many lies that are out there. Our inability to see nuance, our inability to see beyond a right-wrong binary, and our inability to look for the truth in the other side of a conflict is one of the biggest contribution factors to division at every level. Because we disagree about some things a person says, we assume that we have nothing in common. We stop listening to try to understand and instead only listen to identify the holes in their arguments in order to strengthen and justify your own position. It's the opposite of confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when you only look for things that prove your own hypothesis. We are living in a culture of opposition bias. Many of us operate like this. Because I'm a liberal, I have nothing to learn from a conservative. Because I'm pro-choice, I have nothing in common with someone who is pro-life. Because I support gun control, someone who doesn't has no idea of what they're talking about. I've felt this polarization get worse in the past few years, and this book was written in 2020, so 5 years ago. In left-wing politics, there seems to be a prevailing worldview that people who don't agree with every social justice principle are racist, sexist, classist, and basically just the worst type of human being. You're either with us or you're a racist, and there's no in-between. People on the right seem to think others who don't agree with their worldview are oversensitive communists or anti-patriotic elitist morons who just want to sit on a moral high horse and complain about everything. You're either with us or you're an SJW snowflake, and there's no in between. Part of the work of nonviolence is to expand the in-between space, sit in the nuance, and sit in the contradiction. One practice I have adopted is to listen to conservative podcasts and read right-wing papers and books by authors I may have significant disagreements with. As I listen, my focus is on trying to find out what I do agree with or to understand why they believe what they believe. This way, when I find myself in conversation with someone who has different views, I can help us to find common ground the starting place for creative resolution. I consider this practice like sparring sessions in a gym. It's not real fighting, but it gives me practice for real-life conflict situations. Listening to someone I disagree with on a podcast prepares me to have conversations in person with a greater level of understanding and empathy than I might otherwise. It has been enlightening to realize I don't disagree with everything a conservative talk show host has to say. It has been humbling to listen to their criticisms of progressive worldviews and policy proposals and realize I agree with some of what they say. Troy Williams, a formerly incarcerated leader and restorative justice facilitator, once told me, the person on the other side might be 99% wrong, but what's the 1% of what they're saying that you can understand and agree with? Understanding that 1% will strengthen your own perspective. So I think that that's something really important to try and do at this point, is to listen to people with other perspectives, and again, in the way that Kazuhaga is suggesting. For me, there's an app called All Sides, and what it does is it lists the bias of all the media, and then it has the latest issues and the headlines from the right, from the left, and from the center. And when you look at that, you can see how people, if all they are getting is right bias media, how they would have a certain worldview that's very different if you're just getting left bias. And then you can link, maybe it's too much if you're a liberal to watch Fox News. I know that I can't watch it, and we know it's not news, it's entertainment that causes damage to the soul, in my opinion. But I can read a few articles, and so I really am going to try to find some podcasts that will help broaden my perspective for understanding. I do want to give a shout out to Find Common Ground podcast. I'm listening to an episode right now, which is really giving me some new information. So with that, keep your heart whole, keep your goodness alive. This is Juju. I'm unfiltered, unedited, and unscripted. Lead with love and do make a difference in the world, and try listening to someone else's perspective.